Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, we're going to be covering April production results from TeraWulf, CleanSpark, and we threw Cipher into the mix for you this week. In addition to that, we're going to be covering what appears to be the first M&A activity post-halving as Stronghold Digital puts himself up for sale on the public markets. We've got a lot to go through in today's video. Before we do though, take a second, smash the like button, you guys. It's a huge help to myself, the channel. Anthony absolutely loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let us know in the comment section below if you're currently holding any of these four companies, what you thought about April numbers, and your outlook for the mining sector in the remainder of 2024. Now with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we're back from the world of live podcasts. We're going to be doing a standard video here for you today, but we've got a lot to talk about nonetheless. So we've got production results out from three of the big companies we cover on the channel, Anthony. We've got TeraWulf, so obviously the Wulf Pack's going to be happy to hear about that. CleanSpark, and we decided to include Cipher this month just to switch it up a little bit. So a lot of activity there. Then we're going to be shifting gears. We've got what looks to be some of the first moves in the M&A space post halving, Anthony, as Stronghold Digital has actually put themselves up for sale on the public market. So interesting to get your thoughts on that one as well. In addition to that, you guys, we're going into Q1 earnings season here. So starting next week on Monday, we've got, I think now 11 or 12 CEO interviews lined up, Anthony, to talk about Q1. This is going to be crucially important for these companies as this was the last quarter prior to halving, and we saw those all-time high Bitcoin prices, plus a lot of those transaction fees. So very interesting dynamics going to be coming out next Monday. We're kicking it off with Griffin. Tuesday, we've got Riot, followed by DMG on Wednesday, Core Scientific on Thursday. Then we're taking a break on Friday, Anthony. We'll be back with a whole new set of interviews the following week. So take a look at the picture here, the calendar, you guys. Mark these down, whichever the companies you're invested in. Make sure you get questions over to us. We're happy to submit those to the CEOs. Just get them over a couple days in advance. Anthony, I feel like I just said a mouthful there. How are you doing, buddy? How are you feeling today?
Yeah, feeling good today. Bit of a green day today for mining stocks, so yeah, positive.
Yeah, yesterday was quite a yo-yo. Hey, it was, my account was up huge, down huge, up huge, and then back down huge to end the day. So it's nice to see, as you say, Anthony, some green shoots here coming through for a lot of the companies we cover. Core Scientific specifically, I just saw up 9% today, so very strong showing for them. But before we talk about some of the other stock performance here, let's get into TeraWulf, Anthony. We want to hear from the Wolf Pack below. You guys, what did you think about the results? Paul Prager looking pretty good now in terms of the daily selling, Anthony, as we see the price of Bitcoin starting to retreat. These guys have been able to take advantage of those highs we've seen each and every day as they sell into the market. What did you think about TeraWulf last month?
Well, a couple of things. We know with the halving, production was going to be less than the previous month. It was just a case of by how many. It wasn't as bad as probably people anticipating because of those transaction fees in those 3 or 4 days post the halving, which really kept the revenues coming through for some of these miners. And on some of those days, it was higher than pre-halving, so they really benefited for a few days. But we're back to, as we discussed on the live podcast yesterday, where hash rate prices hovering under $50 per petahash per day. But TeraWulf mined 348 Bitcoin at their two sites. They've got Lake Mariner and the Nautilus site, so 348 in total. Compare that to to March. They mined 379. So not massive, about 8% down in total production. Bear in mind that the halving occurred on the 19th of April, so 2/3 into the month, you'd expect that number to be low. So there was a bit of benefit there. In terms of revenues, $23 million, $23.1 million. In March itself, it was $25.5 million. So, and bear in mind, TeraWulf sell on a daily basis. So even though the Bitcoin price finished 15% down on the last day of April, with them selling on a daily basis, they made the most of the revenues of each day during that month. And we've had this discussion before about those mining companies that hodl. When the Bitcoin price is rising, it's great news. I mean, the revenues increase, the balance sheet position increases, and that increase goes to the income statement. But when the Bitcoin price drops, those companies that are selling on a daily basis, they come into their own then, and so TeraWulf's revenue will be somewhat better than coin for coin than a lot of the other miners that are going to announce their monthly updates in this month. So with regards to the hash rate, they operated at 7.8 as an average hash rate, which is slightly less than their 8 exahash in total. So it's like the first full month at 8 exahash, but they're operating slightly lower than that. They're making great progress with building 4 at Lake Mariner, and once that comes online, middle of 2024, that gets them to 10 exahash. So that's their plan. They'll get to that plan, and then there's further growth during the rest of the year. They're also moving into the HPC space as one of many miners in this industry are doing this to secure those guaranteed monthly revenues, and they've made a commitment of an initial 2 megawatt blocks of power, which 2 megawatts doesn't sound a great deal. Bear in mind, you've got Lake Mariner at 160 megawatts, you've got the Nautilus at 50 megawatts, so they've got 210 megawatts in power supporting the Bitcoin mining. 2 megawatts supporting HPC. If you look at what Bit Digital are doing with regards to their 3 megawatts, and they're bringing in $50 million of revenue, 2 megawatts brings in a significant amount of revenue. So don't think about 2 megawatts being a small amount. It's an enormous amount of power for HPC. HPC doesn't require the same amount of power that Bitcoin mining does. So by allocating that sort of like small percentage of their power available to HPC, they can deploy thousands of the latest generation GPUs, at the site, and the fact that they've got great power uptime, it'll be a good project for them to start rolling out. But overall, a very good report. I mean, even looking at some of their metrics, the Bitcoin per exahash metric for April, it looks very good compared to some of the miners that you'd expect to be at the top. So we had Bitfarms on yesterday. Well, TeraWulf's metrics come out slightly ahead of them at the moment. So, vying for maybe, a top 3 position there, TeraWulf this month. It'll be interesting to see when all the results come through. But yeah, overall, a very good report.
Looking really good. Yeah, they're, I guess, following the 1% allocation as we've seen in the Bitcoin ETFs in the HPC realm as well, Anthony, with 2 out of 210. And you got to give credit where credit's due. Paul and team made it very clear that they have hope and they have faith that the Bitcoin price will go up, just like most of us. But you can't run a business on hope and faith, and they want to book those concrete revenues day in, day out. And like you said, Anthony, in April on a coin per coin basis, they're going to see a higher average overall sale price. So kudos to the team. Very strong month, and looking forward to see how things progress here now post halving. So moving along, we've got CleanSpark. Another strong performance compared to where I was considering they would land for the month, Anthony. Again, an odd 2.88 sales of Bitcoin, but other than that, pretty much a full 100% hodl this month. How did you think the team at CleanSpark performed?
Yeah, I mean, CleanSpark have the only stock with a positive share price in 2024, and sort of competing with the Bitcoin price in terms of year-to-date rise. So over 17 exahash now. They declared 17.3 as their current hash rate as at the 30th of April. They mined 721 Bitcoin during the month, and they hold everything. The 2.88 Bitcoin that they sold is effectively Bitcoin that goes to their senior directors in the company as part of their salary compensation package. And we know that's occurring on a regular basis there. But all that information's available online for those people that want to to review that sort of information. So the HODL themselves, they've grown this HODL in a very short space of time. The HODL now is at 5,739 Bitcoin. Their efficiency for the mining machines, if you look at, they've been getting the most up-to-date mining machines. We've just seen that massive order go through for the the S21 Pro, which is at 15 joules terahash. That will be arriving in the next month or so, to start getting their hash rate, as where they want to position it by the end of the year at 32. And that machine's at 15 joules a terahash. Well, the fleet efficiency at the moment is probably now challenging Marathon as to be the best efficiency of a mining fleet, and they're at 24.22 as we speak. In terms of revenues for the month, they brought in 43.7 million, so that's an extra 20 million on top of from what TeraWulf brought in. The Bitcoin mining per day is at 23.3, and it was 26 in March, so a reduction of about 10%. But again, it's the same. The same issue is the halving is now meaning that miners are getting less, and unfortunately these numbers will drop again come the end of May, because you're going to have a full month at the post halving rate of rewards. And we know with the transaction fee settling down now to between 5 and 10% of the reward, and the rewards being 3.125 Bitcoin every 10 minutes, that's going to drop. So the miners will be hoping that an impact on the Bitcoin price might be able to help them with the revenues, or another shift back into transaction fees. And we've discussed that transaction fees aren't a fad; they're probably here to stay a bit longer, and they will probably have to be more dominating the reward position than just the Bitcoin rewards. So we'll see that go well. But you can't argue with CleanSpark's growth over the last 18 months. Market capitalization growth over the last 6 months, and another good update from CleanSpark.
Yeah, I thought so as well, Anthony, and good to see that HODL continuing to rise. It's hard to imagine trying to HODL thousands and thousands of coins now in a post-halving world. So I'm glad that CleanSpark was able to put some of those away. Another company that was actually able to HODL everything this month, or April, I guess, is Cipher. So this is one we've been getting a lot of requests for, Anthony. We thought we'd include them in this month's coverage in terms of their production. 100% HODL at Cipher as well. Obviously less production overall than CleanSpark, but another fairly strong contender, I thought.
Yeah, so again, the operating hash rate, at 7.7, it's been slightly increasing during the year. There's not a lot of growth in 2024 currently or in the plan for Cipher. Most of their growth occurs when they get their sites completed, their big site in Texas completed next year, and that will then sort of like take them, probably more than double where they are at the moment in terms of hash rate. So they're doing it sort of like in a more phased approach. I mean, bear in mind, some of these sites, when you're building your site yourself, some of these parts for the site, some of the power parts for the site take up to a year, in advance to order. So you've got to be really, planning these things well in advance of when you require them, because the lead time on certain items is really long. The actual building of the site, can be done really quickly, and we've seen, what some miners can do. We saw, we talked about Argo when they built the Helios site. They did that in 7 months, 200 megawatt facility from scratch, from breaking ground. We've seen what the pictures from Childress, where IREN are ramping up their size there, and you can see these facilities going up, these 20 megawatt facilities going up, sort of like literally every month now, and they'll have to continue to do that to get to the end of the year. Cipher have got 70,000 deployed rigs. They've got a HODL now over 2,000, so that's approaching sort of like where, a few hundred behind where Hive Digital are at the moment. So there's a group of miners, probably 7 or 8 miners who are starting to HODL more and more of their production. They obviously firmly believe the Bitcoin price is going to go further from where it is at the moment. And as we see these results come out, and we talked about the Riot result yesterday, Riot benefited by 235 or 245 million in terms of valuation from their HODL in their quarterly earnings update. So all these miners that are going to be releasing their results in May will see a lot of green in these results, because the Bitcoin price was 42,000 at the start of the period and finished at 71,000 at the end of March. And so these results cover that period there, and so there'll be a lot of there'll be a lot of green. I don't foresee any of the miners to be coming in with any losses in that quarter. And then it'll be interesting to see how they manage post the halving. So,
and I was going to say, Anthony, the issue with that is it sets a very high watermark right out of the gate, right? It's going to be very difficult to match Q1. However, Q1 should show a lot of upside surprise for a lot of these companies. So a bit of a double-edged sword there.
Q1 will be one of the best quarters for the year, because obviously, it had the full rewards of 6.25. It really depends on the Bitcoin price. So you've got another 8 months of the year left, and we know in previous cycles the Bitcoin price has rallied around the month 5 post halving. So if as I say, we don't put any predictions where the Bitcoin price is. But if you look at some of these analysts where they think it's going to go in the next 8 months, we're all going out there and ordering Lamborghinis. So these miners will be hoping for that. And we've seen a lot of similarity, a lot of correlation with what happens in these cycles, and very, very similar. As I say, I don't cover the technical analysis. I just look at the fundamentals. But there are people out there who study it and can talk about it equally in a measured way that I talk about the fundamental analysis. So I'm not saying there's no room in that. There's plenty of room in this space for both. But I don't predict anything, and I know you don't, Bryce. And so, we're happy to let these other people predict, and then we'll probably do a podcast, outlining how their predictions went at the end of the prediction. So
I already put a down payment on my Lamborghini, though, Anthony. I already pre-ordered the thing, so I hope these predictions are right, but who knows?
Yeah.
So yeah, nice month for Cipher. Now, moving along, Anthony, this is something we talked about a lot: M&A activity post-halving. Specifically, our prediction was kind of more in the private sector, as some of these distressed assets, maybe they didn't have access to capital, they couldn't upgrade their fleets, so on and so forth. Now we have Stronghold Digital, who's essentially come out and said, hey, they're open to offers, essentially putting themselves for sale on the public market. What did you think about this move, Anthony? Do you have any potential buyers in mind? I know we've talked about the Marathon Bitfarms acquisition debate. Who do you think could be picking up Stronghold these days?
It's an interesting one, Stronghold. I wrote an article on Stronghold about 2 years ago. One of my first articles for Compass Mine actually was on Stronghold, because what they do is they use waste coal to create energy, and then they repurpose the land where that waste coal was, so they turn it back into green sites. So they do something that's really positive for the environment. So it was a really good article to write and put Bitcoin mining, to try and take some of the foot out of the messaging that goes out there by certain areas of the media and certain other industries that want to sort of put Bitcoin down continuously. So it was good to do that article. They have got debt. I think it's around about $55 million in debt on the balance sheet. And they just released their numbers actually. So, the balance sheet itself, if you look at the shareholder equity of the balance sheet, it's actually it's about 62 million. So what that means is that the market capitalization is only 46 million today. So this is one of those companies that's got a better book value than the market capitalization. So if a company was able to go in there and pay 46 or 50 million for them, and bear in mind, as soon as you start jumping in and going for these companies, you'll pay a premium. So but even if you put a 30% premium on that 46 million, you're still going to get around about where the assets are. So you'd be getting the assets. Now, this is interesting. Stronghold have got 4 exahash of hash rate, so that's not far short of where Hive are. Hive are at 4.7, probably going to get to 5 this month, but they're at 4.7 at the moment. Stronghold are at 4, so it's not that far away from the size of Hive's mining operation as well. And I suppose if you're one of these miners that wants to get to a significant level, so we talked about those 4 yesterday, and actually can put, with Marathon going to 50, you can put them in that bracket as well now. They just changed their target from 35 to 50, so they automatically go into that bracket where they've got a significant gap to fill this year. I think it's 21 exahash. And we've talked, and we won't be discussing any more about potential Bitfarms to fill that because it's just ludicrous. But CleanSpark going to 32, Riot going to 31.5, growing nearly 20 exahash. Bitfarms growing to 21 exahash from 7 at the moment with 8 months to go. IREN at 9, approaching 10, have to double the 10 in the next 8 months as well. You can discount IREN, they've got their own site. You can discount Bitfarms, they're growing into Paraguay. You can discount Riot because they've got Corsicana, the largest site in the world. But then you can start looking at Marathon and CleanSpark. And this could be one of those projects. I mean, we know that CleanSpark have got 20, 25 options on the table. Who knows if this is one of those options? It gives them 4 exahash really quickly in terms of, operational facilities, they've got massive orders in for mining machines, so they could probably replace some of the older machines. I don't know what the makeup of the Stronghold mining rigs
are. That was going to be what I asked. What's their fleet efficiency? I
don't know what the fleet efficiency. It won't be. I know they had an order. I remember their order coming in December 2021 when they ordered S19s and paid $80 a terahash for these S19s, and they arrived in 10 days. Time, in those days it was a 9-month lead time to get miners, but they managed to pay more money but get them quicker. And what they didn't envisage was the Bitcoin price was going to drop from the end of 2021 all the way down to 15,000 in 2022. So not, in hindsight, and it is hindsight, all these mistakes that miners make are, with great hindsight, you can say you can do something different. There's only a few ways you think actually they could have done something different there beforehand. A lot of them are sort of like, trying to determine when the best time to do something is. Yeah. And Stronghold, I spoke to miners at the conference this week about Stronghold doing that deal and saying, actually, it did make sense at the time when they bought those miners. If the Bitcoin price would have held at sort of like in that 60, 70,000 bracket, they would have had 7 months or 8 months of mining before they would have expected to receive the miners on order. So they could have actually worked back and earned them revenues to effectively get the return on investment that they would not have had with no miners for 8 months. So it wasn't like we're just going to pay over the odds. There was method in the sort of like in what we will now look at as madness, but there was real method at the time there, and you can understand it. And a lot of the CEOs I spoke to about it were saying exactly the same thing. It was probably a good deal to do at the time. Bear in mind, Riot and Marathon were buying mining rigs in 2021 at about $30 a terahash. So when you're paying 80, that's a bit of a jump. That is, even if you are going to get them within 10 days.
Well, it just goes back to the volatility in the sector, right, Anthony? It's very rare in another industry to have an underlying asset like this that can change price that quickly, either up or down. And as you say, hindsight is 20/20, but at the time, you got to do what you got to do, right?
But just to I mean, we're not going to cover the earnings in any great detail, but they made a net profit of just under $6 million for the first quarter. So again, we talked about these mining companies becoming green in the first quarter. Here's Stronghold, and bear in mind when you've got $55 million of debt on the balance sheet. That's costing you, a significant amount, of interest that you have to pay on a regular basis. So the interest payments in that first quarter were $2.2 million on that 55 million. So if you looked at that and extrapolated that for a year, that's sort of like $9 million on 55 million. So you can say that's probably 17, 18% interest rate there, something like that, along them sort of terms. So, you know, even with a significant debt for a sort of like what I'd say is a, you know, not a small miner, but, you know, getting close to that mid-tier miner. You know, I mean, if you look at 4xs now, you'd probably say they're a mid-tier miner with 4 exahash, although all the numbers seem to be going up, because we're saying at the moment, you know, to get into that middle group now, you want to be aiming for 10 exahash, and then 20 exahash plus is getting you into the top tier. So, you know, 4 might be determined as small, but it's not a totally small miner. There are a lot more miners lower than 4 exahash. You know, probably about 20 miners out there publicly listed less than 4 exahash. This could be it could be an option. It could be an option. You know, Marathon and CleanSpark have got to get facilities. They've got to buy facilities. They can't build them. They haven't got the time to build facilities now, because they have to order all those parts, and those power the power parts will take a year in advance unless they can pick them up. By doing something like this, this might be you know, an option for another miner to pick up something where you're actually not going to pay overly a premium price for it, you know.
Well, and you got to think, Anthony, the timing, right? Stronghold knows Q1 is going to be a good looking quarter. They've got everything polished up, ready for sale. But like you say, with these large companies, CleanSpark, they've got a lot of machines on order that they need to put somewhere. So they may also be looking for companies that have got older fleets that they can go replace right out of the gate, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, if you think about another valuation metric you can look at for Stronghold would be, you know, what is their value per terahash, or per exahash, or like that. You know, it's 25. If you add on the debt and take away the cash, you're probably heading towards an equitable value of around about 100 million. And you've got 4 exahash for that, so that's 25 million per exahash. And look at sort of like CleanSpark at 4 billion, divide that by the 7, you know, say their enterprise value, you know, will be maybe slightly less than 4 billion, might be 3.6 billion, but then divide that by the 17 or 18 exahash, and you're into 200 million per exahash.
Yeah.
You know, there's a company at 25 million, and you've got a premium on CleanSpark, and Marathon will be in the same boat as well as those. You know, at 200 million. Cipher will be another one. You know, so they've got 7.7 exahash, and they're a $1.1 billion company. So they're not even twice as big as Stronghold, but their market capitalization is 20 times the size. And so, even if you pay a premium for Stronghold, it sort of makes sense to even have a look at this. This is something that is, you know, is real. And it might be that, you know, we talked yesterday about these mining companies who, because they're small, are just not able to raise capital. They've only got a small amount of they've got an ATM in place, but I think it's something like $3 million worth of shares. So it's not going to eat into that debt. So they've got to keep making these interest payments. They've just had a halving. Those interest payments stay the same. They don't halve. You're still going to pay the full amount, but the rewards coming through are going to be less in May. Not too bad in April, as we've already articulated. The transaction fees really help the miners, and to be honest with you, we looked at 6 or 7, 8% down on what the March numbers are. And March was a 31-day month, by the way. April's only 30 days.
True.
So when you start building in the days, it's even less than that. You know, the gap. So may be an interesting story, and this Stronghold news now might be what we start seeing happening now with some of the smaller miners. I don't foresee any of the sort of, like, I'm going to say the top 8 or 9 miners that we cover, anything above the likes of Bitfarms and Hut and TeraWulf and IREN and CleanSpark, Marathon, Riot, Core Scientific. Though I don't think those are, you know, that it's not going to issue them, but some of the other ones might start having discussions about how they're going to manage going forward. Mm-hmm. And there'll be companies like Greenwich, the companies like Argo Blockchain, who will be absolutely having discussions. If Stronghold are announcing this now, with that, what I consider to be a favourable balance sheet, a net income for the first quarter, and they're basically saying, "We're up for sale, boys." You know, there's going to be interest, and there's going to be others that are going to be looking at it as well. And you know, there was talk at the conference about a number of miners who had already sort of started, but it's not publicly known yet. So we'll wait and see. As I say, it was interesting to see a mine of this size announcing it already, literally 10 days after the halving.
Yeah, interesting. But there is definitely some benefit in being the first, especially as this due diligence takes some time. And obviously, time is of the essence right now as these machine orders are on purchase. But like you say, Anthony, 25 million, even if you have to swap out the rigs, still not too bad considering there's becoming a premium on infrastructure, sites, access to power. And as we've heard from a number of CEOs, there's just not a lot of sites available anymore in the United States for the mining activity. So very interesting way to kind of kick off the month of May here, Anthony. We appreciate you dissecting all this news. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the section below. If you're holding any of these companies, who you think might be on the market to pick up Stronghold, leave a comment, hit the like button, you guys. It's a big help to us. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Anthony, I'll kick it back to you for any closing thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, we've got a week of updates to come out now, and earnings are coming out every day now as well. So there's going to be a lot of work to be done, a lot of comparisons. We need to go through some of these accounts and see what their cost to mine was in Q1 and compare that to what these, these big analyst firms have put out in their updates and see if we're making sense of their numbers. But it's a lot of work to be done in May. May's going to be busy for us. As I say, you've already highlighted how many CEOs are coming on. Looking forward to it.
Should be a fun month. Make sure you guys get your questions in. The interviews start on Monday. We'll see you there.